So the NCC provisions for mid-rise buildings, so basically up to 25 metre effective height. Basically there's another concession in the NCC for fire protected timber. So again, it's only for class 2, 3 and 5 buildings, and we can use fire protected timber wherever the NCC talks about non-combustible construction for these types of mid-rise buildings. We still have to meet the required fire resistance level. Can't be more than 25 metre effective height. The whole building has to be sprinkler protected. Any installed insulation is non-combustible, and also introduce cavity barriers, as Paul referred to, in terms of stopping that hot gases or smoke within where we've got any form of cavity. One thing I forgot to say in the low-rise discussion is that cavity barriers are not mandated for low-rise buildings, but our technical guides recommend them. So there's a difference between the NCC and the guide. So in effect, with our 235 buildings, there's a specific clause for Type A construction, and again for Type B construction. Previously, with these, the NCC only allowed concrete and masonry construction for some of these elements, such as internal load-bearing walls, firewalls and shafts. So the mid-rise provisions enable us to build all those elements out of timber construction. So Paul briefly showed this, but under the NCC, we've got, here I've called it lightweight timber framing, but there's a general provision in the NCC, which in effect picks up our traditional light frame construction with some fire protective grade linings on there. The DTS provisions refer to fire grade plasterboard as the DTS. You can use other board products, but it needs the evidence of suitability from the manufacturer to show that they can achieve those resistance to incipient spread of fire requirements. So there are two provisions. One general, which these light frame systems come under. The other one is known as massive timber. So this is, as Adam alluded to at the introduction, solid slabs of wood. So there's a requirement that we have a minimum thickness of the panel of 75 millimetres. That's the only additional requirement. So these timber systems need a fire grade plasterboard, and they also need sprinklers throughout. General systems, I won't spend a lot of time on them, but typically your traditional frame construction will fit in under that. And then we have our sprinkler systems, and typically it will be our sprinkler systems throughout. 2 layers of 30mm fire grade plasterboard on the walls, 2 layers of 16 on the ceilings to achieve the fire resistance level of 90-90-90. Now, you may not have twigged or may not have been clear, but even though we've introduced sprinklers, there's been no reduction in fire resistance level. So it still maintains a 90. Other forms of construction, fire engineers will reduce the fire resistance level because they've introduced sprinklers. We've got sprinklers and no reduction. So it adds to that strength or robustness in the systems. And the need for cavity barriers for these light frame systems to stop fire spread. That came back from discussions with the fire services, and I can understand it. They didn't want to be chasing fires up a 7-storey building. So in effect, we contain the fire. So we have cavity barriers at the junctions. So if there's a fire, if it does somehow breach into the wall, it doesn't go up 7 or 8 stories. It stays within that space, so it's contained. With the massive systems, basically because there's a lot of inherent fire resistance, so they need to be a minimum of 75mm thick. We need the fire grade plasterboard on the outside of that timber element. Still needs a sprinkler system throughout, but the NCC enables us to go down to 1 layer of 16mm fire grade plasterboard purely for the resistance to incipient spread of fire requirements. So the 1 layer of plasterboard says nothing about your FRL. All it's saying is that bit of plasterboard will protect the timber element there for 30 minutes so that the timber element won't feel the fire for 30 minutes. But you still need the evidence of suitability or a test report from a CLT supplier or an LVL or a glue lamp supplier to say that their product tested to a 1530 Part 4 test, which is a full-scale test, will achieve a 90-minute fire resistance level with one layer of plasterboard. So at the time of drafting of the NCC changes, we didn't have a lot of CLT in the marketplace. We didn't, at that time, didn't have a manufacturer in Australia, which we do now. So it was all left to the suppliers to do their work. We had all that previous information from your CSRs, Boral, Lafarge, plasterboard manufacturers to say, here's our light frame systems, these are the fire performance. We didn't have any of that for these massive systems. But what we did know is that one layer of plasterboard would protect that timber for at least 30 minutes in the event of a fire. So in terms of the systems, and Paul's briefly touched on this, first line defences are our automatic sprinklers. They don't work 100% of the time. I think Paul in the analysis used the number of around 92% of the time. So when they don't activate, then we're reliant on the plasterboard systems. So we have full FRLs on our elements, no reduction because of sprinklers. We have cavity barriers to contain the fire, and anything we put into our wall systems is non-combustible, so we're not adding to fuel load. So Paul suggested maybe I show just a few little details. Light frame, cavity barriers. NCC clearly talks about the placement of cavity barriers in terms of maximum distances. So in effect, we're trying to put these cavity barriers at floor level. Again, think containment. We don't want fire spreading. We want to keep it to that story level. The maximum vertical height between cavity barriers under the NCC is 5 metres. Maximum horizontal spacing is 10 metres to try and contain it within the spaces. So in our guides, we'll show these details and showing where these cavity barriers are required in order to achieve the requirements of the NCC. Again, I'll just make the comment, we helped draft the clauses in the NCC. That was the intention. It's in our technical guide as to the intention of all the requirements in the NCC. But we also have some other details for information that we didn't have at the time of drafting of the clause changes, and that when people start to talk about having penetrations through building elements. So in our technical guide, we will show details of openings in elements, and we'll reference a evidence of suitability report. This is a regulatory information report that shows the details and then gives you how to construct those in terms of your system, how to install those. So there'll be a detail like this. This is for a massive element. Basically what it will show is that you need to achieve the required fire resistance level for that building element. Any opening will be protected, so we'll run a plasterboard element to fully line the opening. And then anything that's put, any sort of system that's put in place there to enable a penetration to go through that, be it a bat system or pillow system or whatever, then you can utilise that from a manufacturer with their test report. So you need to have the evidence of suitability for the fire protective measure, the bat that you're going to use into that space. We provide the report that shows that as long as you do that, you can then use whatever infill system you can. So there's an assessment report. This is just a quick screen grab on the WoodSolutions website. Adam alluded to it, it's a huge website. The only way I can find things is straight on the homepage in the search box, put fire test reports, hit search, the second link will take you to this page. So we have information about, people get these questions all the time, fire hazard properties for flooring, for wall lining, ceiling linings, test reports are there. And then when we talk about fire resisting construction, we've got the assessment reports that are available there for free download from the website. So for those that are interested in the reports that are available, go there. My view is I'm trying to keep populating this as we get more information. We've done a whole lot of other fire test work that we haven't yet published, which will hopefully down the track will find its way to the website as well. So in terms of the pathways, again, Paul mentioned it, guides 37 and 38 are for mid-rise. 37 is how to build, 38 is the basis for the change. So all of Paul's fire engineering analysis is in guide 38, all the how to construct is in guide 37. But we can also go beyond the mid-rise buildings, and you'll see a couple of buildings go up here in Melbourne, not too far down the track. So we can go beyond that, but they're all performance solutions. So you need to engage your fire engineer and get in early with them and talk about your structure and talk about what you're thinking to enable that performance solution to be done. Guide 38 is a good document as well to give you some basis for some of the fire engineering analysis work. We're also in train working on another document that we've done based on some testing work that we have done but not published, which we're looking to pull. We've done a whole lot of fire test work that we're trying to pull together into a published document, which hopefully within, I'll give myself 12 months, but within 6 to 12 months, hopefully we'll have that all published. And that will be principally focused at fire engineers. So in terms of where are we going? So there was a submission that was put through again by the industry, which made its way out for public comment. Basically, this is going to be the extent of the change. So the current clause, C113, basically going to delete those words. So the effect of that would be that you could, in effect, build any building you can think of out of timber construction up to 8 stories. We don't know yet if that's gone through. I think the board of the Australian Building Codes Board meets later this month. We haven't had any technical comment from their technical committee, so we presume that technically it's sound. It's just a matter of time now, but hopefully if things go through, from the 1st of May next year, you'll be able to build 8-storey buildings under the DTS, fire protected timber. So don't think exposed, we're thinking protection as a first step. So look, I'll leave it there. I won't take up any more of your valuable time, but I'm happy to take any questions, if anyone has any further questions. No, that's fine. All right then, well, thanks very much for your time and your attention. Thank you.